Hi and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Meg and this is Skylark Beauty. I have kind of a new setup, still getting used to the setup. So yes, this is my family's home and I'm visiting for the week because my partner is in Iceland. Living it up, I'm staying here for the week with Jerry. But it is a good opportunity to go over some of the makeup collection that I keep here, that I've mentioned before because of my mother's surgery that I stayed here. And I brought a lot of makeup. I brought a lot. I would say I brought at least like 50% of my collection after I had done a major declutter. So that being said, oh, my hair looks really flat. That'll just have to do. I figured that for this video, I would go over my favorite indie palettes in my collection that I have. I guess I can start with my Sydney Grace palettes. I found out about Sydney Grace through Mel Thompson, who sadly will always be one of my favorite YouTubers. But when she passed, she had made a collaboration palette with the company Sydney Grace, a brand that she had spoken very highly of during, gosh, the last few years of her channel that were up. This year for my birthday, they brought back the Tiny Marvels palette that she had collaborated with Sydney Grace on. They brought it back, and I don't remember the exact number, but I think at least 50% of the proceeds go to her husband and her family and supporting them, because she had, I think, 5 children, and her husband Puffin is just probably still reeling from the fact that she's not here. I can only imagine how stressful that has to be. When I found out that they had restocked her palette and that I still had the chance to get my hands on it, it was on my wish list for my birthday. And if I did not receive it for my birthday, then I was just going to buy it myself. This is what it looks like. These are the colors. Now they look a lot more pastel-y almost and bright, and not as muted as they actually are in real life. Actually, my 2 favorite shades are Love Bug and what is this one? Meadow Hawk, as well as Fire Butts. Those are great. Scarab is a very pretty duochrome, the standard teal, blue, brown duochrome, and it does look like Scarab. But it was my first time really checking out Sydney Grace's formula, and I really, really like it. And I really, really appreciate the hard work that she put into that palette. That's very sad, but it's always a piece of Mel that I can have in my collection to remember her by. The next Sydney Grace palette I got for free due to a promotion that they were doing for the Temptalia palettes, which I got. This chair though. So they have the 3 Temptalia palettes that they did that come individually or as a set, and you can choose light or dark, which is another thing that's great about Sydney Grace. You could pick one of their Mountain Trails or California Coast palettes in light or dark for free if you got all 3 of the Temptalia palettes. And I chose the Mountain Trail because that's, well, fall was coming and I could foresee a lot of looks that I would want to do using it. So this is what it looks like. It's beautiful illustration. These are the colors. So once again, it's translating very yellow. The mustards, it just looks a lot lighter than the colors actually are. They're a lot more deep and grungy and saturated than one would think looking at it through here. But they're very creamy. And one thing I noticed right off the bat, not so much with Mel's palette, but with this palette and then the 3 Temptalia palettes that I will be showing you, is I have never met metallics quite like Sydney Grace's metallics. Okay, so the coolest thing about the Temptalia palettes is that they make like a scenery. Let me try and do this without dropping them because they're very expensive and coveted. They make a scene, the 3 of them together, with the howling wolf, the galaxy, and then that glacier at the bottom. I chose to actually get the deep over the light in some of these, and I can't remember which ones. Okay, so this is the radiant reflection right here, and I got this one in light. And all that means is that a few of the transition mattes in them are lighter in color for people with a lighter complexion to use as transition colors. That's all that means. But interestingly enough, Some of the darker transition colors I liked more than the light ones in the other one. This is the Radiant Reflection. I could swatch these, but I'd be swatching all of them. But trust me when I say that the formula of the metallics is so rich, so foiled, and creamy in a way that I don't see in any other indie formula, maybe except for Glamlite and maybe Blend Bunny. But those are more like putty metallics and shimmer toppers. These are more like they have oil in them or something that makes them really grab, and the vibrancy does not get compromised. It's not a topper. The vibrancy is still there completely. What you see in the pan is the color that you get on your eyes. And I really appreciate that about the Sydney Grace formula. On to the next one. This is the On the Horizon light, the one with the wolf on it, howling at the moon. So this you could say is a little more neutral than the other one. There are still some blues, purples, but for the most part they're more muted and more of like a naturescape colors. However, they're all kind of colors that you would see in like the Northern Lights. They're beautiful. And they still have that same beautiful, wonderful, creamy metallic formula. So you can definitely see that this is a little more muted, everyday friendly, whereas the other one's a little more just out there, colorful, fun to play with, but certainly not like a neutral palette by any means. Then this is the last one, and this is the Quintessence, and I got the Deep in this one. So this is the Galaxy looking one. And the reason I got the Deep was because these two and this color were, even though I'm of a fairer complexion, a lighter complexion. I have a tan right now from the beach, but normally I'm much lighter. The transition shades were just a little too muted and light for me. I liked that in their Deep, these would be seen much more as transition shades. And I felt that they matched better with the actual color scheme of the shimmers in the palette. I didn't want to get those really beigey light transition shades. I wanted these kind of grungier ones. So that's my reasoning for getting the Deep instead of the light. So I really appreciate that option once again. All right, wow, I still have so many palettes. Okay, I need some coffee. I learned about Menagerie Cosmetics a couple years ago, but nothing that they'd done had really caught my eye, solely because, I mean, they had cute, colorful palettes, but I wasn't necessarily into color until this summer. I'm not even kidding you, this summer. So I'm in my 30s and I'm finally getting into color. It's never too late to get into color, in my opinion. I found out the owner has a sugar glider named Ruby. I don't know if I've ever mentioned it on my channel, but I have had sugar gliders my whole life. I've had 5. Roxy is the one that I have tattooed right here. Roxy was my baby. And Puka was also my second favorite. Actually, they were just both my favorites. So full of personality and great animals. And when I found out that the owner of Menagerie had a sugar glider, I freaked out because one of the spoilers was that it was a sugar high palette. So I'd been holding off on getting it, A, because of money, and also because I didn't want to get it just because it was about sugar gliders. I wanted to make sure I would use colors. And also I had never bought their formula before. As well as I just wanted to make sure that it was something that I really, really would like. It's adorable. The packaging is cardboard, sleek cardboard with Ruby just gliding along with some fruits in the background. You get a mirror, and then this is the color story. Look at that. Oh my goodness. It's gorgeous. It is gorgeous. I only got it because they have a section on their website that I had been watching of saying goodbye. So there are some palettes that they're rotating out just because I guess they're selling out of them, as well as they're, you know, just making room for new stock. And they were gonna be saying goodbye to this palette, and I had wanted it so badly, and I was like, this is my only chance. And it wasn't on sale or anything, but I was like, I have to get this. And I'm not disappointed. So actually I lied. These shimmers are very similar to the ones in the Temptalia from Sydney Grace. These are very, almost like moisturizing, creamy, and pigmented. And I'm sad that I didn't get it more into spring and summer, because I think I would have gotten a lot of usage out of this. And I will, but I am definitely the kind of person that wears makeup depending on the season. I have to really be feeling the season translated into how I do my makeup, or else I feel off. So the cool tones and the grungy tones come out to play in the fall. So the next two palettes I'll go over quickly because they've been, I'm sure, widely reviewed and everybody knows them, but they are the Eternal Eclipse palette from Lunar Beauty, as well as the Nude Prism palette. So the Eternal Eclipse palette, I believe, is still available, but I just fell in love with the color scheme. The packaging is just A+, but I love, my light makes everything look so much brighter, but I love slate grays, I love charcoals, but I also liked how there were some neutrals in this row, and then the toppers are just so shimmery, so pretty. They are less creamy and more toppery, not as pigmented and opaque when you put them on, and I usually use my fingers, or I will use a flat shader brush with setting spray on it if I really want to get that glimmery effect, which you don't have to do with the other brands, by the way. But the color scheme is just beautiful, and their formula is wonderful. I did notice that they improved, in the Nude Prism. They definitely improved their shimmer formula. So it is almost like a putty formula, like Glamlite's. A very, as you can tell, cherry blossom neutral palette, and I really like it. So this time they put the shimmers here and then the mattes here and here. And I love deepening up colors with this row, and I just like having some light transitions, and then bam, you have these beautiful, beautiful lid and inner corner shades. They're just beautiful. What I like about both palettes is the range of colors goes deep enough that you could use it on a multitude of skin tones. It's very inclusive. That's one of the reasons why I do like Lunar Beauty, and I respect Manny's brand a lot. I might not always find Manny like my favorite YouTuber ever or influencer ever, but I do like his cosmetic brand a lot. I do think he's done a great job with that. So the next two palettes I did get to play with a few times this summer. I got them this summer. One being the original Glamlite Mikayla palette. So there's a bunch more Glamlite palettes that I'm hoping to be able to get in the next year. I'm hoping they don't get rid of like the ices, not the Frosted Flakes, because I don't like orange that much, but the ices, Margarita palette, Martini palette. Oh, they're beautiful. Even the purplish wine palette. There's so many palettes that I want from them, but I'm trying to watch my budget. So I opted to get the Mikayla, the first palette from Glamlite, because A, it had 30 colors in it. B, I was getting into rainbow stuff and colorful eyeshadow, as I mentioned. And then C, I was going to get the second Paht 2 palette, and I figured they're gonna complement each other. So why not get Part 1, which is why I got Part 1. It has this fun shimmery glitter in the front, a mirror, and then these are the shades. This putty formula is very similar to the last indie brand I'm going to talk about. They're very putty-like. You can see my finger indent in the shimmers. So their shimmers, they're like a mixture of a topper, and some are more opaque than others, but I would say that their shimmers are more along the lines of a topper. For example, let me take that color right there and I'll swatch it. It's called Nas. Oh shoot, I didn't get trash bags. So it says trash bags on my hand, but just ignore that. All right, so as you can see, it's not opaque. It's very shimmer heavy, but it's not opaque. So it would make a great topper. But then let me grab one of my Temptalia palettes. Whew. And I'll show you what I'm talking about with that. Let's go with Galactic Muse. This green right here. Oh, it just feels so buttery. Okay, you can see the opaque difference, right? You can see that? Okay, now I have to wipe that on my pants. All I'm saying is that they have very different consistencies. And depending on how opaque you want that shimmer to be, whether you want it to be more of a topper. I'm wearing a topper right now, right here. So depending on whether you want a topper or not, or whether you want that like heavy, opaque shimmer, it's up to you. But Glamlite is gonna be serving you more of that topper feel. So that was the first Mikayla palette. The second Mikayla palette, well, I bought them as a bundle because, like I said, they were gonna, hold on, coffee, my throat hurts. They sold as a bundle because they were going to complement each other. So this is, I always keep the cardboard packaging for some reason. I feel like it preserves the shadows better. There's probably no science backing that up, but that's just what I do. So this is the Mikayla Paht 2. And I don't really even know that much about Mikayla. I just know that she's famous through TikTok and her makeup on TikTok. That's all I know. And so she must like colorful makeup, otherwise she wouldn't have created these palettes. So this one looks like a pot of gold, Irishy theme to me. Once again, these look very bright compared to what they actually are. Very green heavy, as you could probably anticipate from the cover, but lots of purples, lots of blues. The shimmers are actually grungier and darker than the shimmers in the first palette. So they really do complement each other in that this one is more rainbowish, more spring and summerish, and I could actually see myself using this in the fall. I mean, it really does look a lot lighter because of the ring light, but I really could see myself using this in the fall. If I'm feeling kind of colory and I miss color this fall or winter, I could see myself using it. So yeah, in a way, I definitely think this Paht 2 palette really rounds off her collection with Glamlite because it gives you the options of being more lighthearted with your color scheme and your eye look, or being grungier and just going a little deeper with your looks. There's a lot of ability to go deep with your looks with the Mikayla Paht 2 palette versus the first one, in my opinion, especially with the shimmers. I love deep shimmers. I'm wearing a deep shimmer right here, dark charcoal. I love shimmers that are deep. A lot of people are afraid of them. They think that it will make their eyes look textured, but I am a dark shimmer fiend and I will wear them until the day I die. 3 more palettes left. Okay, whew. So the last indie brand that I want to talk about is one that I'm very excited about. And I'm very excited to see what their future holds. I learned about Blend Bunny Cosmetics through, I think, Angie Nikovist. She had featured the Dollhouse palette on her channel, which was interesting to me because she doesn't like neutrals. She makes it very clear she doesn't like neutrals. But when I saw this palette, I was like drooling, and it was a neutral palette. So it was by Blend Bunny Cosmetics, who also makes a really, really badass set of blending brushes, detailed, defined blending brushes that I got for my birthday, and I got this for my birthday as well. And I was so happy and grateful to get it for my birthday. So it looks just like the sleeve, nice sleek cardboard packaging, about, I would say, no, a little taller than the ColourPop Mega Palettes, if you want a reference for size. And here she is. So what I love is the columns do the work for you as far as the mattes go. And what I love is that this row is all, they're blackened versions of these. And that makes it so unique because today I used my whole eye look today is this row, this whole row. And that looks more like a charcoal, but it's actually like a blue-green. And I mean, these ones, this one's kind of out of left field, I feel like, and maybe this gold too, because there's not really blues or golds in here, but I mean, they're pretty, but I could see the purple being used, maybe. These shimmers make more sense than these, and this one is the one that I used on my inner corner, or on the inner part of my eyelid. Regardless, they are beautiful, and they have a very similar putty texture to that of the Mikayla palettes that I showed you. Ooh, it's rattling. It's like a rain, do you remember rain sticks from when we were little? Sorry, I loved rain sticks when I was little. They have a similar putty feeling to the metallics where you can leave an imprint. Therefore, when you're trying to pick it up on your shader brush to really get that high impact, it's a little difficult. And the sparkles are a little sparse, and it's not as opaque. It's like the first swatch I showed you from the Mikayla palette. It's not going to be anything like the Temptalia palettes from Sydney Grace. It just won't. But I still think it's gorgeous. I love the look. I love it. It's beautiful. And I like how they made the neutrals dark and grungy so that I can wear it for the fall. It's a neutral, cool leaning palette, and the shimmers make it just so glamorous. So glamorous. So then they had also come out with a Surge palette that is not old, but in the beauty industry, I guess it would be considered old. I think it came out last year sometime. But I had to get that because what was so interesting to me about it was it's a mixture of pastels and neons, and then these blackened colors, and then just the bright colors. It's so interesting because it's such a different take on the rainbow. These neon shades are no joke. No joke. They're like fluorescent. I wouldn't be surprised if they glowed in the dark. And then these shimmers are just beautiful. Still putty-like, still like topper-like, but still beautiful. And then you can deepen out your outer corner or with the designated shade. Then these are just kind of a little bit muted, bold. I would say, like, remember when Crayola came out with the bold color story scheme or whatever for their markers? I was obsessed with that. These are like the bold versions. And then you have these pastels, which are interesting, so it's a very interesting dynamic palette. I felt like it would really help round out my colorful collection that I was trying to curate this summer. And then Blend Bunny had to come out and do it again. My allergies are testing me. Ooh. And they released their Primal palette. So I had to get it to complete the trio. And this did not disappoint, but it is very intense, very intense. And it's interesting, it's a different layout. So they give you a large white and a large black. I like that. You can deepen or lighten any of the colors. They give you a real pastels that it could be considered similar to that of the Surge that I just showed you, but they're not exact dupe shades. Then there's this, and this is brighter than the bold strip I showed you that I called bolds. And these aren't necessarily blackened versions, but they're deeper versions. And then you can obviously tell these are just shimmer versions of these. So there's a lot of controversy over Blend Bunny having overlapping shades, which I don't think is necessarily fair for a couple of reasons. Because when you make a palette, you're not necessarily going to assume that every person that buys, say, this palette is going to already have the Surge or the Dollhouse palette. You can't assume that every person that gets one of your palettes is gonna want the other two palettes. So yes, if there are similar colors that complete this story, okay. If it has a place there, then it makes sense. If it's part of the color story of this palette, it makes sense. Second of all, to really see if there's any truth behind all the accusations, oh, they're just, doubling up on colors and just using dupe colors. I put mine all side by side and they aren't dupes. The owner did come out with a statement saying, yes, it's hard not to dupe colors, blah, 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 which almost to me made me sad because it made me feel like the owner was admitting that there were dupes, but they're not dupes. They aren't. They're very, very different. So it just makes me upset when people try and find any way to criticize brands that they can, especially indie brands, smaller brands that are just trying to make it in this saturated world of makeup these days. It's cutthroat. Well, no one's ever going to be happy. I've learned that by having a small business myself. You can't make everyone happy, and that's okay. You can't. The world would be a very boring place if every palette made everyone happy. So I like to think that there's a nice balance of neutrals, colorful, and dimension and textures in the palettes that I collected this last year. And that's pretty much it for my indie palettes. I think actually all my indie palettes are here at this house. So I guess if I go over any other palettes at the apartment, they won't necessarily be indie. They'll probably be Beauty Bay. But I have a lot of other palettes that I want to share. I have a lot of my ColourPop palettes here. as well as at the apartment. So yeah, I want to do a ColourPop ranking video as well. So that's another one to do. But thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that my insights on some of these palettes might help you make decisions about whether you're truly interested in a palette because of the color. Well, I know it's really bright. It makes the colors a lot lighter in appearance, but I do hope that it helps shed some light on the formulas and what to expect from the palettes. I know that this one is probably maybe not available anymore because it was in the say goodbye list. And then we have Mel's palette, Tiny Marbles, and I do not know, I do believe they were restocking it for the last time, so it's the third restock rather. So I'd highly suggest purchasing that to help support her surviving family, as well as the fact that it's a beautiful palette and Sydney Grace makes a wonderful eyeshadow formula. I believe that's it. I hope that this edits down to under 30 minutes, but I think my next video will probably be, will I buy it or purchase or pass type video again. I really enjoyed making that last one, but it does take a while editing those. I'm not gonna lie, and get those damn pictures in and sound effects, but they are fun to do. Yes, that will be my next video probably. I hope to see you in my next video. Please like and subscribe if you like reviews and hauls and collections, shopping stash, and sometimes an occasional get ready with me. I think now that I have this set up, I feel more comfortable doing get readies with me, and sometimes talking about some controversial topics. So I have some ideas for where I want to take my channel in 2023 that are a little more cerebral, kind of incorporating therapy into my makeup world, conjoining the two, because they're my two biggest passions. So we'll see what happens. I'll probably do a chit chat, get ready with me about the direction that I want to go with my channel at some point here. Please take care of yourself and have a great weekend or day whenever you're watching this. And I will see you in my next video. Thank you. Bye.